in most situations. Now you see CLG with the Rengar and the Camille ban. You can almost certainly expect a LeBlanc ban last. The only situation you wouldn't see that is if Keane really doesn't want to play it, but even then, I feel like if they would have just saved that, CLG would have banned it anyway, but they're taking the risk because they really don't want to be forced for Keane to have it, and it speaks to a hole in Keane's champion pool.
It gives a little bit of breathing room towards CLG to actually make a real ban of their own instead of just having to ban away the last member of the Unholy Trinity.
Exactly.
Like we always see Red Team having to respond to, and they're going to decide to take Ryze off the table, still targeting the mid lane, still targeting a power pick, but not just the power pick.
Exactly, and Ryze is another one of those big picks. Kha'Zix is probably one of the most first-picked champions in the game, definitely the most first-picked jungler since Rengar almost never gets through. They're choosing between him and Varus since the lethality changes I feel like have made Varus the #1 bot laner, but Kha'Zix would be this more logical choice.
And a point worth making is that both of these junglers have actually played Kha'Zix the most, tied with a couple of other champions, actually. But Kha'Zix is a most played champion for both of these two. They've each got 4 games on him, and now Chaser's going to be having a 5th here in match #1 against Counter Logic Gaming. CLG, though, they're taking a chance to pick up a couple of power picks of their own with Maokai and Varus locked in first rotation.
Yeah, and I actually think this is a little bit dangerous to pick the Maokai so early with Fiora still on the table, only because Ssumday is on the other side, and he has pretty much been the sole carry for Team Dignitas. He's 2-0 so far on Fiora. It is one of the picks you put into the Maokai, and we'll see if they pick it here before CLG could potentially ban it out on the second side.
Dignitas will go ahead and respond, picking up the Jhin in the bottom lane, the other one of those AD carries that benefits from the lethality changes, so they're going to lock him in against the Varus, and just as you predicted, Fiora for Ssumday, that top lane carry.
Yeah, so Darshan definitely hoping to make sure this game accelerates into a teamfight phase, because if Ssumday's Fiora gets to the super late game and the game stays close, that matchup becomes very favored for the Fiora. Until then, the Maokai tank will have much more teamfight presence, so that's what CLG is going to be trying to do, is accelerate the game to that point.
Graves actually going to be pick #3 for CLG. They're going to match roll for roll, AD carry, top, and jungle on both sides, and it's what they were kind of talking about on the desk leading into this. Lethality buffs mean new champions becoming available, becoming a possibility, and Graves is one that kind of surprised us.
Yeah, and it's specifically just the Edge of Night, and if you're really far ahead, you end up throwing the Duskblade on top of the Warrior and Ghostblade, and you have so much base damage and lethality to cut through the enemy armor that a previously strong Graves is now just deleting people off the map if he gets to that point, but he also does it at the cost of being quite squishy.
Ban phase #2 coming up now after those first 6 picks means Malzahar and Syndra are going to be taken off the table. And since the roles were matched in the first part of the picking phase, that means banning phase will likely look somewhat similar between the two teams as they want to be taking those mid laners and supports off the table.
Yeah, and you can see CLG, as was the case yesterday against TSM, is doing a pretty concentrated effort to ban out the Zyre and the Malzahar in phase 2 to push it to the different support pool that Aphromoo had a little bit more credit on. Interesting as well that Team Dignitas has banned the Karma, since that's Xpecial's most played support by a long shot. Mainly they didn't want to give it to CLG because with the double support ban, CLG was kind of prepping a Karma pick, so Team Dignitas wasn't going to get that anyway.
Aphromoo also has a couple of games under his belt on Karma already, but he's going to be blocking in the Thresh. A playmaking support here for Aphromoo in game #1.
That's the thing, we keep hitting on it. Aphromoo is a playmaker, and CLG is at their best when he is able to initiate and actually be a part of making the plays, instead of being on a disengaged champion like the Zyra or the Misfortune. So I like the choice from them, especially with all the support bans. And they also are allowing Huhi a counterpick to try and take advantage of what he claims is a very large champion pool.
Well, that champion pool for Keane is going to include Corki this game. We've been seeing a lot of this guy in the mid lane, Jatt, and for good reason. He is so incredibly strong right now.
Exactly, and we're in a little bit of a poke meta here because of the long-range marksman in the bot lane, and then also Corki complements that so well. This very high uptime, long-range poke that really forces teams to try and engage on you. So very common Corki to be picked in the mid lane with something like a Jhin. And then they also now have picked the Tahm Kench to try and match up against a Thresh hook that lands. Just eat the guy before they can take it in.
Easy way to get him out of trouble. If you've got to do it, we'll have to see how well that works out for Dignitas, as that final pick will be coming through in just a couple of moments for CLG, and it's Orianna, currently the most played champion for Huhi, going to put another game on it so far this split, matching up against that Corki.
Yeah, unfortunately, most played in a 1-4 split doesn't necessarily correlate to success all the time. So
right.
1-3 on it so far. It's been okay, and this does speak very well to CLG having a very strong team fighting composition. They have large amounts of damage, they have differentiation in their damage type, and they have Orianna who can also help shield Darshan when he goes in to be the big tank. So very much a team fight focus here from CLG, as they're going to want to try and get the lead and then really just stuff it home into Team Dignitas so Ssumday can't become the split pushing force.
And there's so many eyes on Ssumday this game as the one who's been that reliable carry for Team Dignitas in the past, in the games where they have looked good. And you also got to remember kind of what we were talking about yesterday when Dignitas went up against FlyQuest. The inconsistency of Chaser and Keane puts even more pressure on Ssumday to make those plays and be that carry.
Yeah, it really does. But I do still like what Team Dignitas has done with this draft, putting Ssumday in a position where he can carry the game. There have been other drafts where Team Dignitas seems to get the super high champions in every role, and then Ssumday's on Poppy, and even if he has a good game, he's not necessarily able to win it. If he's on Fiora and Chaser on an S-tier jungler like Kha'Zix can also have a good game, you could see Team Dignitas just winning off that.
Absolutely could. We'll have to see if they can make that happen against CLG, or if CLG is going to show them exactly how things are done. Two teams that nobody was expecting to be this low in the standings now got to go head-to-head. One trying to claw their way back. One still going to be stuck at the bottom. Who's it going to be? We're on to Summoner's Rift in game number 1 to find out.
Yeah, sad truth of this game is the loser goes to 1-5, and as we mentioned earlier, would be tied for last place 1/3 of the way through the split. That is not something either of these teams expect, and it's something they desperately want to avoid.
That's some rough business. A fate nobody wants to be sharing with the current state of Team Envy is Dignitas and CLG. Nothing really too crazy going to be happening here at the level 1 as Xmithie and Huhi stepping up just a little bit into enemy territory. Going to find Keane waiting on him as Chaser and Ssumday deciding to sort of respond in kind. Darshan will be there waiting for him. Chaser forced to flash over the wall.
If Aphromoo gets into hook range and lands it.
Oh, death sentence. Just a little bit wide right.
Yeah, so that was a really risky invade by Chaser, and he's a little bit fortunate to only get out of there with his flash burn and not also giving up first blood. What does happen, though, is since CLG showed so many people towards Chaser, Team Dignitas was able to ward the blue.
Keystone Mastery's popping up there on your screen. Nothing really too crazy. Maokai still going to be going with Courage of the Colossus post-nerf. We've been seeing a couple of those top laners switch over to the Grasp instead, but he's going to be remaining with that extra shielding potential in the team fights. And a little bit surprised at this Tahm Kench run. I don't think we've seen Bonds of Stone in a long time.
Yeah, we definitely haven't. With the nerfs to Courage, Tahm Kench not having the greatest ways of proccing it. And if he doesn't think he's going to be getting into slap range for his Grasp, I can see it as an argument. I actually think just the raw gold value of that mastery is okay. But yeah, it's definitely a rare choice.
Chaser starting off on the bottom part of his jungle. Xmithie going to be starting off on the opposite side of the map, top side for himself. Red buff beginning for both of these two as Lod and Xpecial walk in, immediately going to find themselves hooked. A little bit of extra damage coming out there from Stixxay to start the lane off.
Yeah, trying to get the most out of that level 1 death sentence, making sure they can get early shove on the lane. The slight range advantage of the Thresh onto the Tahm Kench can allow CLG to shove this out a little bit, but a little more kill threat than we are used to in our bot lanes early on in the split. And we may end up seeing some fireworks down there just because both of them have gone with that longsword start to try and rush their first lethality item, which lowers their max health pool and makes them more vulnerable to getting killed.
Aphromoo always trying to be that playmaker down here, constantly stepping up, looking to grab those death sentences. That last one not hitting onto Lod. However, the piercing arrow follow-up will find its mark. As Chaser moves his way up into this top part of the map, seeing if he can help Ssumday out. Repose going to be blocking that Maokai Q. As Darshan is forced to flash away, Chaser goes ahead and blows that summoner spell.
And this could be pretty troubling too, because it looks like Darshan actually has the wave pushing away from him, and he's flashless without wards or jungle assistance close by. So either he needs to be very risky here because a Kha'Zix return gank could happen, or he would need to teleport back into the lane with wards. Chaser's coming right back up. He should almost be expecting Xmithie to counter gank though, because Xmithie needs to be up here just to protect Darshan.
Nature of Graves very likely to want to counter gank as well. Goes ahead, fires that into the line, into the wall. But Chaser just hops himself out of there. No real danger for him just yet. Darshan and Ssumday still just going to be 1v1ing as the junglers both head into Chaser's top part of the jungle.
Xmithie needs to stay up here until Darshan can push that wave into Fiora. Otherwise, he would get denied off the wave because he is flashless. So good on Xmithie for getting that ward at the Gromp and clearing the plant to get more vision onto Chaser. Might allow Darshan the time to get in. And then he also nearly kills Keane.
Yeah, that nice return on the end of the line makes it so he's able to proc that Thunderlords, get some very juicy burst down onto Keane, force him out of lane here nice and early. Chaser again going to be hanging around the top side, walks over 2 different wards without realizing what he's doing. Just going to get himself back now, not really seeing an opportunity to do much to Darshan. Darshan's just going to be cheeky with those saplings, make his life a little bit more difficult to get out of there in time. But the fan vote that we actually saw pop up on the screen a couple of moments ago, 48% think Dignitas is winning, 52% give it to CLG. A very split player base over the outcome of this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where it's really difficult to decide the outcome because both of these teams have shown flashes of being strong, but ultimately haven't been able to pull it through. So I can see where the split is. Xmithie going bot.
Xmithie active again. Looking to make the gank this time into the bottom lane of Dignitas. Pulled to safety by that lantern from Aphromoo. Not really finding exactly what he was looking for there. You saw Aphro go for the hook onto the Tahm Kench, but again, couldn't find it.
Yeah, did burn the flash, which is a successful gank since it was part of Smithie's natural jungle pathing as he goes back. Hasn't really been denied too much, but with that gank Chaser trying to harass, CLG have been tracking him very precisely here, and he smites early. Huhi gets it.
Huhi easily securing that big raptor. Chaser's got to be timing those smites a little bit better if you're going to go counter jungling. It's one of the most important aspects of it. Otherwise, you're going to be losing out on that big monster in the camp, and that's where most of the experience in gold is.
Yeah, the tricky thing with Chaser there is he was so low that if he didn't smite, he would have feared giving up first blood to Huhi, so I can see why he smote early, just not having the best of times on that Kha'Zix early.
An unfortunate situation. Ssumday having himself a pretty fun time here in the top part of the map. 38 CS to 25 very early on in this lane, so off to the kind of start that you would hope for your Fiora if you're expecting him to carry this game.
Yeah, and Chaser has put a lot of time into the top lane to burn that flash, and Xmithie is also going to try and get something back here. Knows he's walking through a control ward, so they have to go now.
Xmithie is just ganking all over the place this game. Ssumday going to be slowed down. Darshan still looking to make the moves if he can. Chaser's on the way. Ssumday keeping himself alive very, very well. Ssumday going right back into the fight. Darshan has no flash. Remember that. Chaser finds the rockets. The courage of the Colossus keeps Darshan alive.
Ssumday is being a bit of an issue already. That gank lasted a while Chaser slowly walked up there. And again, Xmithie has to kind of help Darshan here. Darshan's down teleport, doesn't want to give up this huge wave, so Xmithie is kind of here holding the wave with him so he's able to farm, and that's delaying his flexibility in the jungle.
Ssumday on this Fiora is so fun to watch because he is so comfortable on the champion. Even with 2 enemy players hanging around, he just lunges back and forth, weaving himself through the minions, grabbing the CS, no fear at all in this guy.
Yeah, and here we go. CLG already trying to mess with Ssumday, sending the delayed lane swap up. This is earlier than we've seen them do it against TSM, and they're going back in onto Ssumday. They don't even need to kill him, but they want to kill his turret.
The riposte is used to keep Ssumday alive after that jump from the Maokai trying to take him down. Ssumday still looking to farm.
Yeah, this could be big, though. Tahm Kench is coming up, as is Laud. They're definitely not going to let him have the turret. And Corki ends up falling back, so no fight as of yet.
CLG really recognizing the Dignitas game plan for victory, deciding they want to jump on Ssumday nice and early, but the pressure just does not pay off for them quite yet. Maokai getting himself back, going to be going towards that bottom lane. Ssumday will do the same, and we've got ourselves a reversal.
Yeah, and they're just going to end up swapping right back, but the question is, do they swap yet again? Because CLG actually doesn't like this Darshan versus Ssumday matchup, especially after a few ganks have gone awry. So Team Dignitas was very quick to match the first roam, but now as Darshan is recalled, and he realized that Team Dignitas was so quick to match the roam, is already running top lane. So unless Team Dignitas swaps back, like, CLG's actually going to be able to get this matchup, which would be 2v1 onto Ssumday and leaving Darshan in the 1v2, which is what they prefer. Because,
absolutely.
With 2 top laners starved, that still delays the amount of time until the Fiora can become really big.
Maokai works a lot better on low economy than Fiora does. Maokai's always going to have that lockdown potential. He's still going to be tanky. There's just so much built into his kit that even without gold, you can be useful in these fights. Fiora, as a carry by nature, going to be needing a little bit more gold under her belt in order to be effective as the game goes on. Gold's still dead even between these two teams, though. Any advantages being built by one side are being answered elsewhere by the other side as Stixxay and Aphromoo pushing up onto Ssumday here in this bottom lane. Xmithie going to be rotating down towards these guys yet again. Always keeping that pressure on.
Yeah, Keane has picked up a package so he can threaten the ganks in the side lanes. And I do like the way Xmithie is using Graves. He's trying to pull Kha'Zix out of the jungle and just force him into spots. That's one thing that Graves is so good at in the jungle, is just pushing lanes, actually, as soon as he comes out of the jungle, because he does a bunch of damage to turrets and also has incredibly good wave clear. So we may end up seeing yet another swap right here.
Ssumday getting himself back, Laud and Xpecial showing up, but at the same time, the back comes out from Darshan. CLG is continuing to juggle these lanes around Dignitas.
Yeah, and this is pretty funny to watch, actually.
It honestly is. It's very entertaining to watch them go match for match on these.
They're constantly running away from each other, and it's all about predicting the play once to be able to get a turret, because right now, they actually have 4 people bottom lane, so all of this dancing back and forth by CLG could end up costing them first turret, because there's no way Darshan holds this.
Darshan alone versus 4, not a matchup the tree's going to be doing too well in. Keane, Chaser, Xpecial, Laud, everybody just ganging up on this one. Darshan tosses in a sapling, but there's nothing else he can find. And it's going to be turret first blood going over to Dignitas just a little bit before 10 minutes.
Yep, they eventually end up taking turret first blood, and CLG is keeping the Maokai and the Fiora a little bit denied on gold, because that's the end result of what's happening. CLG is going to end up killing this turret. They just don't get the bonus. So that's the cost they pay, as well as this Ocean Drake. I think that's actually too high of a cost, but that's good for Team Dignitas for matching it and countering properly.
Yep, Dignitas feeling pretty good about the situation they've found themselves in. That first Drake taken down at 10 minutes. Extra regeneration early on. Keane looking to make the moves onto Huhi. Curtain call opens up. Huhi's getting out, but he's out behind enemy lines. Ssumday going to be chasing him down. Aphromoo there with the lantern, and saving Private Huhi is mission success.
Could still see a 5v5. Shockwave burned on blue.
That was an interesting turn of events as CLG's looking to go right back in. They've got the hook onto Xpecial. First blood for Huhi. Laud's going to be number 2.
And CLG get a very early, weird team fight around the blue buff, but Darshan did see the opportunity to go in for the bot lane of Team Dignitas as they were a little bit scattered. He thought maybe it would be safe to enter the jungle as Huhi tried to blue secure with a shockwave, but ultimately, Xmithie did get the blue with the smite, and they get the first 2 kills, plus more turret pressure.
A tier 2 turret going down 1 minute after turret first blood did. CLG sees what Dignitas did early on. They were like, damn, they got the better of us. Let's just turn it right back around.
Yeah, it was really chaotic in there, and even though CLG is the team fighting team, they're the ones that are playing the map as much as possible and really pushing Team Dignitas on their cohesion, and that's the time where CLG comes out a little bit on top.
Huhi grabbing a kill and an assist in that despite blowing the shockwave, and here's how that whole fight goes down.
Yeah, so Chaser's really low, and that shockwave, even though it was actually targeted at Chaser, Chaser ended up flashing over the wall as well as dodging the shockwave, so CLG's still making the call to go with Chaser being so low, and then everyone on Team Dignitas was stuck behind the Raptor camp, whereas the bot lane just kind of found themselves off on their own, so CLG well able to just stay together, whereas Team Dignitas got split apart.
And despite the fact that they lost the turret first blood gold we were talking about earlier, the fact that they've got a global turret advantage as well as a 2-0 kill lead means CLG is now up 2,000 gold early on in this game.
Yeah, definitely makes up for it. And then even if you just look at the Maokai versus Fiora, their gold is even with Darshan being able to pick up those kills in the team fights. But Team Dignitas trying to get something back. Look at that teleport positioning by Ssumday.
Xmithie pulled to safety by Aphromoo. Ssumday coming around from behind, though. Can they make the moves here? Stixxay exhausted, trying to get himself away. Chain of Corruption going to be finding its way onto Ssumday. CLG in full retreat. Ssumday still looking to chase him down. Tahm Kench into the back lines. Xpecial is there, and Stixxay is done. Dignitas find their mark.
Woo, and they burned a lot to get there, but credit to Ssumday for being able to finish off that kill. He couldn't quite riposte the ultimate from Stixxay, and it made you think they wouldn't be able to close it out, but Xpecial came in with the Abyssal Voyage right at the end to get the slow and ultimately the Ssumday kill. But that's a lot of free time and a lot of map pressure elsewhere. Mid lane's pushing up, so's top.
Huhi trying to shove this in as quickly as he can, while Darshan is just delivering a big ol' wave of minions into that inhibitor turret. Ssumday with that TP way behind them was ready to make this play.
Yeah, and right before the ward died, that ward died already on the replay. So Stixxay flashing back, sees Ssumday right there. Stixxay ulting while Ssumday was dashing forward is just the perfect timing, but at that point, Xpecial comes in, Ssumday just dashes forward once again with the flash, and they're able to close the kill.
And despite the fact that you've got so many of these high damage carry potential champions on the side of Dignitas with Fiora, Kha'Zix, Corki, and Jhin, they've got to be happy about getting that on Fiora of all people. Just boosting that carry potential early, making it so he's able to get where he needs to be and be that massive split push threat.
Yeah, because you look at the rest of the Team Dignitas team, and it's very poke heavy. Jhin and Corki are about sieging, and with the Tahm Kench to aid them, disengaging. Not to mention, I'm expecting Chaser to evolve W second instead of Leap to get the slow on his Void Spikes as well as throwing out more Void Spikes, and that just kind of adds to the poke they're going to be able to throw out. But that's all well and good. You really need the split pusher to work if you're going to have the rest of your squad doing the poke.
Chaser caught out, and Xpecial is right there with the save, keeping him nice and safe. Exactly what you mentioned when we saw that Tahm Kench locked in Champion Select. Somebody gets hooked, then they get eaten, the play is done.
Yeah, and even an ultimate burn by Varus to stuff that play, so as long as Xpecial is near Laud, and as long as the two of them aren't next to 5 people on CLG and then they don't just kill Xpecial after the feast, then they'll be all right.
It did cost Xpecial his flash there to get in range of Chaser in time to keep him safe, but that's definitely a trade that Dignitas is okay with making. Still down 1,500 gold. Ocean Drake going to be alive here in about 1 minute. As you can see, CLG hanging around the area, sort of clearing out some of these wards, prepping for that event, making sure they're going to be ready when it does happen.
Yeah, and especially when you're in these games where there's so much poke flying around, the Ocean Drake really climbs in priority as far as who wants to get it. Team Dignitas already getting the first one, because mana is a constraint in poke as well, whether or not you can continue to poke, so it's good for both sides to have it. More important to deny the team that's absorbing the poke, though. So CLG really wants that Ocean Drake so that they can't get poked out, and they should be teleporting and prepping for this Drake.
And when this Drake fight does happen, we're starting to see first items really come online here. Yumu's Ghost Blades completed for both these lethality-based AD carries. Morello Namacon done for the Orianna, Sunfire Cape on the Maokai. So we're starting to see those early spikes happen for these guys in their builds.
Yeah, and having the Serrated Dirk on top of the Ghost Blade, plus still having a tier, just puts Stixxay way ahead of Laud in damage. But what's interesting here is Team Dignitas is actually prepping the top wave to just increase Ssumday's advantage, and they don't necessarily care about giving up position on the Ocean Drake. Ssumday doesn't even have teleport, so they're going for this kill on Darshan.
Darshan alone, Xpecial coming in to make it a 3v1. Ssumday going to be soaking that turret for a long, long time. Xpecial ends up eating Chaser up, trying to take him away. Darshan exhausted and beaten down. Dignitas grabbing that kill for themselves, going to be getting turret number 2 as well, but CLG found number 3.
Yeah, and I really question Darshan jumping in so freely right there against the Fiora and the Kha'Zix, because yes, Xpecial did have to join with the Abyssal Voyage, but now he can't even wave clear for the second turret. So CLG traded with time in the mid lane turret, which he could have done regardless of Darshan dying, and it is an Ocean Drake sacrifice, but he really just did not have to die there.
CLG trying to come up here and stop them on Dignitas, see if they can get
here we go.
Here, Xpecial's going to be bursted down. No thick skin even. Bursted before he could do it. As the 4th turret falls on the side of Team Dignitas, CLG going to be grabbing more of those objective leads. Keane's clearing out some waves down here, but he's got Xmithie and Stixxay waiting for him. Keane's a little bit too far forward.
Yeah. There's some pings right on top of him. Keane has no vision on the map, and there's the cavalry.
Here comes the pincer attack. What can they do? Keane looking to get himself out. 2 different TPs going to be channeled. Remember, the Dignitas TP is going to be there slightly beforehand, but it's actually canceled. Keane now alone. No way to get out of that one, and Stixxay is going to grab it with Piercing Arrow.
Yeah, Ssumday decided to cancel. Darshan decided to complete. Still 2 teleports burned. Ssumday's will come back a little faster because he canceled his. He was not going to be able to save Keane, who was up at that point.
Not as Fiora.
Was hoping to scare him off. Unsuccessful.
Sadly for them, Darshan also had his TP, decided to call the bluff, and considering there were 4 members of CLG down there, Ssumday just decided he didn't want to be an extra tombstone in the bottom lane of Summoner's Rift. 4-2 now still for CLG. Looking pretty good here in game number 1. Also had some mistakes though, so looking to see kind of who does this more cleanly going into the mid game. Who's actually got a coherent game plan and can translate that into success.
Exactly, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's really what the game is about. Can they keep Ssumday down?
And if they're going to do it, this is the way to get it done. Ssumday forced to flash over the wall. Stixxay going right after him. Xmithie is there too. Adios, Ssumday. That's the pick they need. Yeah,
because that's really all Team Dignitas has. They've been funneling everything towards him, even giving up Ocean Drake for it. So CLG now taking Ssumday down. Do not have to worry about the split push threat and should be very aggressive about trying to take this turret with the next minion wave.
Stixxay going to continue firing those arrows off as well. A lot of power in the poke as he's whittling down health bars. Even if Xpecial gets some of that HP back, if there's no minions in front of those piercing arrows, they still have quite a sting to them.
Oh yeah, and they help wave clear incredibly fast as well. Pretty difficult to push up against the Corki though. He can just, as you can see, a big one from Corki and a W from the Jhin clears out the back wave, stuffing the push and allowing Ssumday to respawn.
Poke spam versus poke spam. The minions just get pretty much deleted and nobody gets to make any real headway as CLG now with a minion wave middle. Gonna be rotating over towards this one, but Corki's phosphorus bombs more than effective at clearing some of those out. Stixxay eating the damage from the big one, gonna be taken down to about half. Doesn't really want anything to do with this fight any longer with that minion wave gone. CLG just keeps dancing back and forth between top and mid, trying to out-rotate their opponents little by little.
Yeah, and they also know they have a big wave brewing into the top side, so that someone's going to go for that, and as soon as Ssumday does, CLG can fully commit down to taking this next turret.
Flash forced out from Keane as he tries to escape CLG, but Curtain Call gets opened up, looking for anybody he can find. Third shot hits Stixxay. Fourth one's going to be finding Xmithie. Big one. Lod grabbing the kill onto Stixxay. Chaser almost going to be brought down by Darshan, who's now Deadly Flourish, kept alive by Huhi. Shockwave not finding anyone thanks to Xpecial's flash. CLG, low health bars. Lod looking to make that fourth shot count. Can he do it? Dancing Grenade finds the kill, but he pays for it with his own life. Xpecial now going to be tanking back and forth. Darshan too tanky. Chaser's able to find the damage. Ssumday looking to get in the mix as Huhi still looking to take Chaser down. He gets him, but Ssumday cleans it up. 3 for 4.
And this is going to be another one, and they get to hand it to Ssumday.
Oh, Aphromoo double killed. Ssumday now 4-1-0 on this Fiora.
So this was a mess as far as fights go, but I understand the plays here. CLG really want to finish this turret, but end up taking a lot of poke. They cannot disrespect this. It's the Kha'Zix poke as well as the Corki poke, and he gets a big one onto 4 people as Lod's Curtain Call ends up finishing him out. But then Team Dignitas is thinking, oh man, we might win this fight, not realizing Fiora is still not here. So it is a 3v4, even if the health is low. So when Lod flashes in, not getting that slat hit and going back in for another Dancing Grenades, kind of gets him one shot, and then they don't have any sustained damage until Ssumday's like, wait a minute, I can get 2 kills. That's more valuable than finishing off this outer turret. As soon as he teleports in, Ssumday was going to clean up these 2 kills, so it was good for Huhi to be able to finish off Chaser. Unfortunately for CLG, it means Ssumday now has 4 kills on the game.
That was a smooth lunge into a post combination from Ssumday as well. Just not even allowing Aphro to waste any extra time as he cleans these guys up, gets himself right back to where he wants to be, farming up 191 CS so far. Black Cleaver and Ravenous Hydra completed. Means he's a very scary prospect to have to deal with in any kind of a 1v1 situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And CLG is going to continue to try and group up now and force more team fights, maybe even hope the Team Dignitas gets aggressive, because in the chaos of that fight, look at all the flashes and the summoner spells that were actually burned. No flashes left on the main, on anyone on Team Dignitas. So if CLG can get Maokai to flash initiate and kill a priority target first, they could see some huge gains.
And you saw it at the bottom of your screen there just a moment ago, but Stixxay 166 damage in the last team fight. Not what you want to be finding for your AD carry. Darshan now in danger of being caught out. Shockwave going to be used, doesn't find anyone. Curtain Call opened up. Darshan, normally the guy who'd be soaking him, doesn't want to be soaking much longer. Flashing in front of Stixxay so that that 4th bullet will not seal his fate. CLG gets out.
Yeah, Ssumday just baiting Huhi Shockwave and allowing Team Dignitas to get aggressive right there. So not even just split pushing, but also helping him out in the 5v5 windows. pretty incredible. Darshan having to flash away defensively. Let's see if CLG can rush down this Mountain Drake.
Drakes are 1 ocean to 1 ocean so far, so this will be a nice little advantage for CLG if they can find it. Now that we're 23 minutes into game 2, remember that Baron could always be an option off the back of a big team fight, so Mountain Drake will help make that a reality for CLG even faster if it does become an opportunity.
Yeah, the Mountain Drake just accelerates the pace at which these teams have to make decisions, because so much of the push-pull in these split-push games with the Fed Fiora is how quickly can Fiora kill a turret or an inhibitor while your main squad is either killing turrets on the other side or rushing for objectives. So again, very critical in this aspect, and those are the decisions that it's going to force. CLG just have more tools now.
CLG's been doing so much damage with this Orianna when the spells actually connect. You've seen the kind of rapid burst he can do with just a basic spell combo landing onto somebody like Keane. With that Luden's Echo now done, that means that rapid fire burst is going to be even more effective. And speaking of rapid fires, Corki's going to be working on that cannon to be completed as his second item to make his burst that much scarier as well. Edge of Night also completed for both these junglers, so a lot of block potential for those critical spells, allow these guys to move a little bit more freely as they're looking to set up picks and set up plays.
Definitely going to help guard against the poke a little bit. Also maybe protect them from a death sentence. If they do get hit by a death sentence, they always have the Tahm Kench who can eat them out of it. So trying to get that resiliency. The fear I have for Keane is, especially against AP mid laners, I often see Corkis go Hex Drinker or Maw second. He has no magic resist on that Corki, so
none at all. If
they are trying to stall out while Ssumday is pushing, they're not doing everything they can to avoid getting picked off, because that's ultimately the way they lose, is if CLG can force a 5v4 while Ssumday is off winning his 1v1, and then CLG steamrolls at home, and that could be just catching Keane with the shockwave. He'd be instantly dead.
Aphromoo moving up very far forward into enemy territory, looking for that death sentence, but again, not going to be finding it. Chaser evolving those rockets second, like you mentioned, back when he was still level 7 or level 8. Very effective when your team's looking to poke, very effective at just sort of kind of keeping your enemies at bay.
Yeah, getting the slow on that spell is super important, so that also helps you disengage. CLG, I wonder if they're just trying to land enough poke before they can go for Baron, because they can threaten Baron quite realistically. Or do they just go for Ssumday? That could be where they're fainting next.
It's the Dignitas plan of action, right? Ssumday, 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 Ssumday. So CLG is saying, we just got to shut this guy down. Just get him out of the picture.
Yeah.
Always keep an eye on that.
And it's interesting, because it's not just because they have Ssumday, it's because they have Ssumday on Fiora. There's certain top laners that really speak to a specific playstyle that you need to be able to execute, and Fiora is one of those where it's so much better in split push and 1v1 situations, and has that scaling component that he will be able to kill. Ssumday will be able to kill anyone once he gets to 5 or 6 items very quickly. Changes the way you have to play.
The percent HP true damage on those vitals means no matter how tanky Darshan gets, he's always going to be losing massive chunks of that health bar as Ssumday acquires more and more attack damage in this split push. He's currently up over 50 CS compared to his opponent in Darshan. So that economy advantage is only going to continue to grow as Darshan stays bottom to try to stop Ssumday as good as he can. Xmithie, though, looking for Lod.
A lot of damage.
Going to be boosted up, speed boosted by that Huhi ball. Lod gets himself away, but he's got to spin the flash doing it.
Yeah, Graves jumps on you and gets you with Challenging Smite. You better run if you're Lod.
Piercing arrow over the wall to find Tahm Kench. Package delivery backwards to safety for Keane. Doesn't want anything to do with Aphromoo's collapse potential. Yeah. CLG has found themselves an opportunity to take control over the entire Baron area. They are going to be spotted out by this ward here in the river, and the call is Baron.
Yeah, that sets them up. They burn the flash on Lod. They feel like they've gotten rid of the wards, but they haven't swept everything, so at least they're burning Ssumday's TP. This will mean they pull off.
Ssumday coming in, Deadly Flourish finding its way onto Xmithie. Piercing arrow fired out defensively, and CLG are off the objective. Dignitas manages to get there in time, and a slightly unthorough approach to taking Baron is thwarted by Dignitas.
Yeah, they were rolling the dice there that Team Dignitas was going to be too afraid of the face check, but they're not afraid of the face check because they had a ward and they knew they were doing Baron, so they weren't worried about the peel. And even that, Darshan had to burn TP to get in position, so it's not even really a summoner spell win. It's just a turret for Team Dignitas. Team Dignitas get a jab in at Baron.
Dignitas still with about a 2,500 gold deficit compared to CLG. The gold difference has been around this value for a lot of the game, but Remember, as the game goes on further and further and further towards that late game, a small gold lead like 2,500 means less than it did back at 12 minutes. And here at 28 minutes, it's going to mean less than it will, or it means more than it will if we get to 45 minutes.
Agreed. The later it goes, the less it means as far as raw gold differences. You have to pay attention to the percentage gold difference. But Bloodthirster almost being completed onto Ssumday. And the only time I've seen a Maokai this year be able to really deal with the Fiora was actually a game over in Korea where Huhi was on Maokai, and he was ahead of the Fiora in gold, and he also built Thornmail third item before the Fiora had picked up the second lifesteal item. That's definitely not going to happen this game.
No.
We already have a second lifesteal item in Ssumday with the Vamp Scepter on top of the Ravenous Hydra, and it looks like Darshan is either going for, the Frozen Heart or Randuin's Omen, so not going to be able to return that damage, and Ssumday's going to continue to win that 1v1. It's just a matter of how slow does Darshan make it.
CLG looking to make some plays yet again, this time on Lod, who is still flashless. Aphromoo wants to find it if he can. Flash into the Chain of Corruption. Lod's going to be caught out and bursted down. CLG, they find their man, and now what is the call? They're here in mid lane. They've got the wave.
Oh, they go. They try to go for sure. They don't have the Maokai here to tank for them, which slows their ability to push a little bit. But even with this kill onto Lod, if they can get Ssumday to go back in base, which they have, they should be going right back to Baron to clear the vision and pressure Team Dignitas in that space.
Got to make something out of this. Lod still dead for another 15 seconds. Aphromoo clearing out those wards, moving towards the Baron pit. Gonna go ahead and drop that control ward, take out the last couple of remnants of Dignitas vision hanging around the area, and they make the call to start it up again. Is the second time going to be the charm? Dignitas wants to say no. They're hanging around and they're ready to go.
It's at 5,000 health. Team Dignitas wants to go.
Dig needs to make their move. It's down to 4K. Going to be dropping down to 3.5. CLG trying to do this as cleanly as they can. Darshan over the wall, looking to shut down Chaser so he can't steal it away. Red team has secured Baron Nashor. CLG is able to grab it. Stixxay is going to be bursted low. Xmithie first. Ssumday's in the pit just cutting these guys to pieces. You got Baron, but what's the cost? Dignitas 5 for 0.
Woo, and a triple kill coming in for Ssumday. The cost, Clayton, is massive for CLG right there. They don't necessarily have the team comp that can kill Baron super quickly, and they got caught halfway through a fight while they were still debuffed from Baron, and they got destroyed in that pit because Lod even made it for the very tail end of that fight, and Team Dignitas is probably going to take that inhibitor.
Dignitas feeling good after that one. CLG sloppily go for the Baron. They end up securing it, lose all 5 members and the mid lane inhibitor in what was a game that was seemingly without great momentum for a while. The pendulum has swung for Dignitas.
Yeah, and even though CLG had the Mountain Drake, they just couldn't kill this fast enough. Just watch how much poke CLG take for being in this pit. Xmithie flashes over the wall here, but like everyone is incredibly low by the time Ssumday comes in. The curtain call is just in range for the back of the Baron pit, so Lod is able to contribute. And since CLG had flashed over the wall previously for the Kha'Zix, they didn't have any CC left for when Ssumday's Fiora came in, who was the scary person in that team fight. Now he's really fed.
He didn't even come in alone. He had a whole artillery barrage behind him with those Jhin bullets coming down from the curtain call. Just a great setup for Dignitas. But now they're still on their back foot as CLG's pushing up into their territory. No Baron buff available for anybody. You take the Baron, you get aced, all of a sudden the buff doesn't exist any longer. One thing also worth pointing out is that once that next Drake spawns, it is going to be an Elder Drake. So 2 big buffs with the potential to be on the table around the same time here in the near future.
Very true, and I expect somebody to keep split pushing to set up these situations. Well, what was interesting is, as Ssumday jumped in, you had the artillery behind him. It's pretty much just like he said, cover me, because missiles and bullets were flying in to
suppressing
the
fire,
other team at bay, and it worked perfectly.
Ssumday sitting on 7-1 and 2. Bloodthirster completed as 3rd item, working on a little bit of a defensive option now with the Spectre's Cowl, probably going for that Spirit Visage to provide even more amplification towards the lifesteal he already has, give him some of that valuable cooldown reduction, as well as just make it so he sort of laughs off the damage that Darshan would try to do to him. It's a complete non-factor, Darshan's damage, now that Ssumday's got a little bit of defense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's sitting at 111 magic resistance and massive amounts of lifesteal. CLG really have to become a little bit even more desperate now. They either have to completely pile to kill Ssumday, which they may or may not be able to do without him taking one with him. Or they have to just rush at Team Dignitas and hope to get the engage, but Team Dignitas knows this too, so they're hopefully playing very far back. And it's all about wave clear here for Team Dignitas, which is why CLG wanted the Baron, because then they would be able to force this, but they don't have the Baron minion, so the wave can get cleared.
Curtain call opens up, but Darshan's going to be soaking those first couple of shots. Redemption used to keep CLG healthy.
Yep, Huhi's minions, they're just going to go.
Bottom lane inhibitor turret is done, but it's going to be Ssumday answering this push in the top part of the map. Keane bound up by the Chains of Corruption. More damage coming in. Collateral damage will find its way back there as well. Keane still alive. Lod going to be forced to retreat yet again. Xpecial going to be jumped on. CLG might be looking to make some kind of a game ender here. Redemption comes in, but it will not be in time. CLG, they find the inhibitor, but they're going to lose their own. No way Dignitas allows them to back in time to stop Ssumday. 1-for-1 inhibitor trade. Yeah, they got the kill on Xpecial, but Ssumday is feeling good up there.
And here's the struggle. Ssumday would end the game. It's waves of super minions. So CLG trying to end it on their own net, but they can't catch Keane. Now they have to run.
Now Huhi's caught out. Now he's almost taken down. Keane looking for maybe one more rocket if he can find it. No flash available. Darshan looking to make the TP to get back in time to stop this. Xmithie is already there. CLG still running. Chaser in hot pursuit. Deadly Flourish finding its way onto Stixxay, but there's no root attached. Chaser popping the ultimate, still looking to catch up to these guys. Ssumday's coming in for the punch. The pinch, I should say. Might be a punch along with it, depending on the damage he hits for. Darshan will be blocking him, just trying to control him for now. Dignitas not able to successfully route these guys, catch them out, and punish them, but they do force them away, and they enjoy a 2-to-1 inhibitor advantage.
Oh boy, yep. The 2-for-1 inhibitor advantage is a win for Team Dignitas, and these are the very tense moments that will ultimately decide the game. Probably not the big climactic 5v5 team fights. It's all about who can get the pick or who can win their side of the map faster. CLG, if they could have gotten Keane with the shockwave, if he hadn't have flashed away, then yes, maybe CLG could have powered through, because they still have the Maokai who can tank things up, but they need to buy themselves time, and they have such a smaller margin of time to work with now that they're down 2 inhibitors against that Fiora.
The nature of this game has just been so tense the entire time because of the drastic difference between the game plans, of the timer that's essentially been put on CLG. Because if they wait and that thing strikes midnight, Ssumday just takes the Nexus on its own. They have to work so hard against this, trying to stop this Fiora push, but with 5 items now, all he needs is one more, and he's going to be full build. Nothing's going to be stopping this guy anytime soon. CLG are going to need to do something decisive very soon.
Yeah, they're definitely trying as well. For now, they need to make sure those super minion waves are pushed out as far as possible, and then they would want to get a foothold in the rest of the game. And this is what tests Team Dignitas' teamwork and CLG's teamwork. CLG is usually so good at moving around the map, but Ssumday has been able to pull out these games and will Team Dignitas to victory when they've been picking Fiora. And we said it during Champ Select, Clayton, when CLG locked in Maokai earlier, we're like, ooh, people don't do that against Team Dignitas because of Fiora immediately going, and they opted into this. It's been a close one.
CLG hanging around here in the mid lane. They've got the top side shoved out a little bit. Mid lane inhibitor has respawned, so some of that pressure is going to be alleviated from this squad. Ssumday looking to reapply that pressure right back into the bottom side, though. The only lane left with a guarded inhibitor in terms of turrets being between Ssumday and it. Dignitas looking to remedy that situation as soon as they possibly can. Chaser's going to be finding Xmithie here in the jungle. The Graves ult doesn't find anybody. Not what Xmithie was going for.
He was open for a one-shot, but he missed his skill shots. And Chaser also had a chain vest. So that really diminishes the effectiveness of lethality, since it's all about, lethality is all about getting people really close to 0 armor. And as soon as you build something like the chain vest, you provide yourself a massive amount of defense.
Elder Drake is now live along with Baron Nashor. That situation we mentioned earlier where you have the 2 big buffs both running at once is now a reality. Keane's got the package, might be able to make some kind of a delivery here, but so far this game they've been nothing but whiffs. Yeah. Pretty much always used defensively or completely not at all.
Exactly, because Team Dignitas doesn't have to engage a open field fight. They only need to be able to throw poke in when CLG is doing an objective, or catch CLG while they're running back and forth trying to deal with Ssumday. So Don't expect him to package aggressively unless it's into a Baron or Elder Drake pit.
Aphromoo almost got a death sentence onto Lod there, but the Ghost Blade was popped in time to allow Lod to have the extra movement speed to get himself out of danger. Ssumday still working on that bottom lane tier 2. It's not going to take too much more work at this point in time. Brings the dig turret advantage up to 8 versus 7 on the side of CLG.
Yeah, and the timing actually doesn't work very well for CLG right now. If Darshan leaves those minions at the turret, it probably kills a Nexus turret. Meanwhile, CLG would want to be doing Baron, but Darshan also has to defend this, so they're going to be losing something unless they pull off a miracle.
Too much work for a single tree to have to deal with. Ssumday, you can see when he procs those vitals, just the chunk out of Darshan's health bar it takes. Very difficult to do anything to this guy without a turret watching over you. As Dignitas sees their opportunity from all this pressure, they move into the Baron area, start clearing out some of these CLG wards, continually kiting back, utilizing the poke, and CLG has no answer for this, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to this point and COD hasn't had the waves prepped, it's really, really hard to play against a talented fed Fiora like this, and Ssumday's mastering it right now. Even now, Darshan wants to be able to save this, and I'm a little surprised actually that Ssumday is going back. It's because the rest of his team pulled, and it may actually buy the time for CLG to get control of the situation.
Inhibitor slowly being whittled down by these minions, but fortunately for CLG, a lot of those minions were already on the Nexus turrets, which then became invulnerable.
Yeah.
So they just sort of stood there and got themselves killed instead of really contributing to anything constructive.
Yeah, that was really well played by Darshan to keep everything alive when it looked like a nearly impossible situation, but it started because Team Dignitas decided to go back and chop instead of keeping that overall map pressure left. Ssumday did buy a straight-up Guardian Angel. Chaser completed his as well, so they're kind of prepping for the next setup, but they had 90% of the pressure already built up, and now they have to rebuild it. Oh, or to just jump over the wall.
Ssumday's just deciding to go for the base. He doesn't care. Forget minions, let's just go back door. Aphromoo looking to make some kind of a play, but Xpecial gonna be keeping himself nice and safe.
Yeah, QSS on the Tahm Kench to make sure they can't get picked, because that's all they have to worry about while
Just
Ssumday
buying
works
time.
on these inhibs.
Buying time for Ssumday, who takes down the mid lane inhibitor by himself. Still has the potential top lane inhibitor he could go for. Bottom lane inhibitor still protected by a turret. Darshan making his way back into the base to stop Ssumday. Can't fight him for very long away from one of those turrets like we mentioned a couple of moments ago. Still only 2,000 gold separating these teams 40 minutes in, so pretty much an even fight 5v5, but 5v5 isn't really the name of this game.
I wonder what COD's going to do, because they need Darshan with them if they want to kill a turret in the mid lane, or they have to go in with all of their squishy targets at Baron and risk getting poked out. So they're between a hard place and Ssumday, so they're in a lot of trouble.
Pretty bad spot to be. Curtain call opened up. Huhi and Aphromoo having to retreat. TP gonna be channeled. Darshan looking to stop him. Aphromoo so low. Still kept alive. Ssumday coming in from the flank just in case the fight would have broken out completely. Pings coming out from Dignitas into the enemy base towards that top lane inhibitor that's completely exposed. They know Ssumday can go for it as long as they hold the rest of CLG here. Dig almost going to be taking some annoying damage onto their support, but it is Tahm Kench, so he'll regenerate a lot of that pretty rapidly. As Ssumday does decide to go right back into the enemy base, he'll lunge over the wall and go for inhibitor number 2.
Yeah, and CLG has no teleport, so they have no other options. They have to go for Baron right now, and it's on Team Dignitas to stop them. Will Ssumday teleport in, and does CLG get aced once again?
This is the call. Baron at 3,000 HP. CLG needs to take it. They need to take it fast and clean. Chaser over the wall, just going to be interrupting backs, firing off the rockets. CLG got the Baron, and this time they got it alive.
That could have been a lot worse for
Way
CLG,
worse.
but now can they run down Ssumday? That's what they need.
And they grab him, flash away. Ssumday keeping himself alive for now. Huhi in hot pursuit. Xmithie looking to go even further. Deadly Flourish coming out. Huhi's going to be in some trouble. Shockwave finds no one. Chain of Corruption onto Keane, who's going to be locked down, but Stixxay is now the one who's going to be jumped on. Huhi's dead first. Redemption in the backlines. Chaser's got GA. Darshan wasting so much time from the rest of Dignitas. Chaser getting himself back. Darshan's GA is popped. Gets himself away to safety with the power of the Lantern, and somehow that's just a 1 for 0. Huhi dies, Guardian Angels get blown all over the place, and Dignitas turns towards the Elder Drake.
So many forced plays right there. COD really felt like they needed to kill Ssumday, so they go all out for it. Huhi doesn't get the right shockwave, ends up taking a whole bunch of poke. They do not finish off Keane. Elder Drake goes over to Team Dignitas, but they will have time to put up another defense. Watch Ssumday here, just doing everything he can to stay alive. Riposte right there, what is the killing blow, and then Huhi just takes so much damage from Keane that he has to flash away, and then just over the back of the fight, watch Chaser, flash jump, kills Huhi, while Ssumday is up from Guardian Angel. And if Ssumday had more mana, I think Team Dignitas would have continued this chase, but Keane and Chaser were very low, and they knew Elder Drake was an acceptable reward here, so they back away with only killing Huhi.
Every single Guardian Angel that was up got popped.
No longer up. That's why you get it.
Fiora, Kha'Zix, Maokai, all losing Guardian Angels in that previous fight. Would have been a lot bloodier without those purchases being there to begin with. 1,500 gold separates the two teams. Dignitas with an Elder Drake buff. They've got 2 Elemental Drakes under their belts, which means it's going to be a 135 true damage burn. CLG just kind of wants to wait this one out if they can.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate strategically for CLG here, because when they have the Baron, that's the time they want to be able to group up as 5 and push off Team Dignitas, but you do not want to do that against a team with Elder Drake, who has it for the next 2.5 minutes. So by the time the Elder Drake is expired by Team Dignitas, which is another minute, they need to prep another split push threat. Otherwise, CLG is going to be able to group up and brute force something down with the Baron buff. Since Baron lasts longer than Elder Drake, that is the inherent trade-off. Elder Drake is stronger in 5v5 combat, but Baron lasts longer. So Team Dignitas needs to go for wave manipulation right now so they can take the choice away from CLG later.
Darshan doing what he can to send that top wave on its way, despite the fact that super minions are pouring in. Keane setting up shop in bottom side. Remember, they've still got that 1 inhibitor turret left to deal with, as opposed to the other lanes, which are wide open should those inhibitors respawn anytime soon. Dignitas into the enemy jungle yet again. They found a free blue buff for themselves. Going to be passing that one off to Keane to ensure more rocket spam as this push continues. Elder Drake about to wear off. Only a couple of more seconds left to go on this one, and that's going to be CLG's potential green light to maybe make something happen.
No, if CLG sees the Elder Drake go off, as long as the super minions aren't full-time harassing their Nexus turrets, you'd want them to go for 5v5 initiation. What would happen elsewise, though, would Ssumday still has a teleport up, so if super minions ever get close to the Nexus turrets, he can just bail out of the fight and go for it. A lot of tension here, and so much of these games have to be pre-planned, because this is just the way the Fiora split push game works.
Stixxay clearing out the waves while Aphromoo provides any sort of an escape mechanism he can for these guys. We're approaching the full build point for pretty much everybody in the game. AD carry's starting to hit it. Mid laner's getting very close to hitting it. Ssumday hit it a long time ago. Darshan does finally get that Thornmail up and going, but considering the Fiora now has 2 different lifesteal items and a Spirit Visage, it's not going to do too much.
Exactly. It will definitely slow the harass, though, and Ssumday, you know, might actually be a little low after killing Darshan. But you can see, not too much. Plus, he's pretty mobile. Can they close him down?
CLG Ssumday again. Very nice death sentence. Ssumday surely going to be brought down. Credit goes over to Stixxay. And for the first time in a long time, CLG can breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's huge. It allows them to potentially either push mid or just get all of their waves pushed out right now. 50 seconds, and they're already at the halfway point in this lane. Plus, they can bring Darshan into tank. This could be 2 inhibitors for CLG, actually.
CLG recognizing that Ssumday still has a 35-second death timer. They've got 1 inhibitor exposed in the bottom lane. Mid lane still got that turret, but they've got everybody here.
Yeah, pay attention to the poke. Darshan has flash. He's going to want to use that to initiate. But there's also a QSS Tahm Kench and a lot of things that Team Dignitas can use to disengage. They're not going to risk it.
Darshan is a full build Maokai with multiple armor items. Does not concern himself even a little bit with the damage from the turret. Just walks up, tanks it up. CLG finds inhibitor number 1 and inhibitor number 2 right thereafter. And the tables have turned. Dignitas now the ones facing pressure. But the curtain call opens up, trying to find those valuable members. Xmithie avoiding the 4th shot.
This is the risk, though. Ssumday's alive, teleporting in, trying to get 2 inhibitors back, and Team Dignitas is trying to interrupt the recalls.
Dig has to stop these backs right now. CLG needs to get somebody back into the base to defend this. The Shockwave's not going to be finding anyone. Darshan makes the TP, gets himself out of dodge in time. Chaser's going to be losing that Guardian Angel yet again. Burst from Xmithie is there. Red turret destroyed. You see the message in the middle of your screen. Ssumday still working on that base.
But they can no longer interrupt the recalls, so it is a 2 inhibitor for 1 trade by Team Dignitas, and slowly but surely, this game's going towards its conclusion.
Eventually, maybe, we'll see the end of this game, but 47 minutes in, when you trade 2 inhibitors for an inhibitor and a Nexus turret, these teams are just going blow for blow for blow. And the fact that they're just not able to get any advantage over each other shows how close of a match this truly is. Baron will be live for the 3rd time in 25 seconds.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you're playing these 1-4 split push compositions, their margin of error is so slim from both sides. So when a team has an advantage, like Team Dignitas had for the last 15 or 20 minutes, if Ssumday gets picked off, you just lose that advantage right away. And they can play it strategically to a point where CLG doesn't necessarily have the answers, but if he gets picked off like that, you see it. Now CLG has the edge. With Baron being back up as well as 2 inhibitors being down for Team Dignitas, they're now the ones in a tight spot.
CLG seeing if they might be able to end the game where Dignitas was not able to. Dig will always have to continue answering those minions flowing in on the other end of the map. Chaser kiting back, utilizing the power of the rocket. Stixxay's going to be eating a lot of damage. Curtain call comes out. Mini shields onto Stixxay, keeping him in a good enough spot. Redemption used, CLG grabbing some heals from that. Aphromoo taken down to about 1/3. Ssumday marching towards the enemy base as Dignitas scares away CLG long enough to move themselves towards Baron just a little bit. Keane with package ready if Dignitas finds a chance to maybe take this fight. Darshan going in on top of Xpecial. This might be our start. Darshan still tanking, Chain of Corruption, not finding anyone. Pretty big spell to not have. Dignitas sees their green light.
Yeah, this is risky because it is a 5v5 fight against a team who wants it.
And there's minions in the Dignitas base. Huhi's going to be forced back. Redemption coming down. Darshan's the target. Piercing arrow coming out. Ssumday going to be bursted low. Guardian Angel pop. Dignitas in a real bad spot. Ssumday now getting himself killed. The lone member dead in this fight. The Nexus turrets, the second one, will likely fall here to these minions. 1 hit away from that big super minion pulling it down. It falls. Open base. Open Nexus for Dignitas. It's a 5 versus 4.
Meanwhile, minions are actually killing CLG's base as well. The second Nexus turret just fell, so CLG kind of have to push in and win right here. If they get poked too much, they would end up losing.
CLG just needs to find the win, go for the Nexus, force this down. Xpecial's gonna be the target. Deadly Flourish coming out. Stixxay exhausted. Chaser gonna be forced to jump out. Xmithie is dead, so is Xpecial. Lod gonna be hit. A piercing arrow. Ladies and gentlemen, CLG, game 1!
Woo! That was a barn burner right there. 2 Nexus turret deads on the side of CLG while they kill the Team Dignitas Nexus. Only 1,000 gold apart from these teams. 10 turrets dead on each side, 14 kills on each side, 2 Drakes on each side. That game was so close, Clayton. But ultimately, CLG walks away the victor.
CLG, man, you got to be sweating for these guys because they had to deal with that Fiora pressure for so long. Just a situation that you feel like there's no way out. It's just slowly constricting the life out of you. And then they alleviate that pressure. They find the pick onto Ssumday. They get themselves back into the game.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you think about it totally from a mental perspective, that was CLG thinking they could just out-coordinate the Team Dignitas side because you're putting their best player on the champion that is most capable of carrying a game by himself, and they still couldn't do it. So that was almost the gauntlet being thrown down by CLG, and it nearly backfired. Like, it probably should have backfired because Ssumday got way too fed. At one point, he was 7-1 in that game, but Team Dignitas just couldn't do it. They couldn't quite get the right plays down the stretch.
And we talked about when this season first started, CLG returning the entire roster, this team that's worked together, the importance of the synergy and having the ability to work together as a coherent unit is what wins games like that.
Cool as a cucumber right there. They just stayed steady throughout the end of that game and closed it out.
For a deeper look into exactly how they did it, what they did, and how it went down, let's check in with the analysts.
Thank you very much, CaptainFlowers. Now, this is a game that we did not expect to go in CLG's favor, given the way that the earlier portions of the game and how far ahead
a roller coaster.
Ssumday,
it looked good.
Ssumday got on that Fiora.
Yeah, so obviously we've been talking a lot about how Dig looks their best when Ssumday's on a carry champion. He's able to get one this time into a favorable matchup into the Maokai. And initially he's kind of crushing lane. It's looking pretty good. And then I actually liked what CLG did a lot, where they started opening up the map and they just kept swapping back and forth. and Dig was always a step behind.
Right, and Dignitas are very clear about their strategy with this, right? Chaser is up there right after he's level 3. He stays up there. He's just camping that top lane to the point where that's why CLG go with this lane swap. And even though CLG, you know, they're going to lose tempo going for this lane swap, right? Now that you're the one being the reactive one, they are able to get some minion waves back for Darshan, and there's a very long chain of events where they actually are able to turn eventually something around in the mid lane, but it is a long chain that is worth tracking.
Right, and so before we get to kind of that point where Ssumday starts to take off on the Fiora and open the map up with the split pushing, let's look at some of those CLG moves that you're talking about. The positives that are going to come out of this game for them is that they still have some sense of macro game.
Right, it is very reminiscent to the old 2v1 style where you're moving around the map a lot, trading TP advantages and things like that, and that's how the early game really looked, was kind of that old open map style, and with that, CLG looked really great. They were pressured in the mid lane, they had deep vision control, and they were able to take the bot turret off a rotation, but then they overstay, take a lot of damage, and the initial engage by Aphro was just a little whiffed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where Dig's going to come out on top here with the fight, Kobe, but Fiora coming in very late with a TP here, no pressure in the top lane.
Yeah, I mean, so Ssumday we're going to sing his praises a lot for a large portion of the split pushing that he did this game. However, we still see that there are some coordination issues with this team. If you are making the call to have your AD carry flash into 4 people, and maybe he's not being vocal about that, or you know, whatever the case, it looked like the team was on the same page of chasing that down.
Right.
Ssumday was at where the outer turret was, so he would have to push through 2 more waves to be able to get to another objective to really make staying up there and split pushing worth it. And they did have that ward in a pretty good spot. If you're willing to flash forward with the rest of your teammates, you know, maybe you make that pincer earlier on and you maybe come out with it with a death or 2 less.
Right, so we had seen this kind of this situation where CLG's playing the macro game fairly well, but Ssumday was still managing to pick up the kills. We saw that 7-1 scoreline at one point in the game with the triple life, or rather the double lifesteal item and the split push pressure that was able to set up. And yet Dignitas not able to close this game out. So let's kind of identify why it was that this comp fell apart, because we were saying Ssumday on the carries is Dig's best opportunity to win a match.
Still think it is.
Yeah, and that's totally okay, but why couldn't they close out here? What was the issue?
Well, there were a couple things. Once they finally started taking the top 2 inhibs off the back of Ssumday's split push, there's 1 inhib left up, and they started kind of grouping around him, and then that stalled them out. And then once, instead of putting him top to guide the super creeps in versus a Maokai, and then pull pressure up, they sent him against the turret alone, and that's when CLG collapsed and they got that fight, where it actually didn't go that well, but they couldn't get the bot inhib turret again. And then it stalled out to the point where both teams had some inhibs down, and then they forced around Baron, which was a huge mistake by Dignitas. They're not the ones who should be forcing around Baron.
All right, let's take a look at a Baron fight here. 30 minutes in, CLG is going to get aced here at the Baron. This was a big blunder in forcing this one.
Right, this is kind of what allowed them back into the game, so we're taking a step back here, where CLG had all that great macro play, and then they forced this Baron really, really hard. They over-focus Chaser, trying to stop him from being able to take this Baron. Xmithie goes over the wall, fails his ultimate to get back over, has to flash back over to secure the Baron, and now they're all trapped in the pit. And this is really when Ssumday took off, and you should say, okay, they should be able to kind of have this split push Fiora take over the game.
Right, that's a triple kill picked up there for the Fiora, and that was kind of the point where we're like, well, there's really no way that Dignitas should lose this game. You also notice in that fight, Huhi blowing his shockwave on the Baron, only hit maybe 1 target. Multiple ultimates throughout the game in this victory didn't hit, or probably misused or not used optimally. He'll receive probably a bit of flack for that and some criticism. Lucky to get the victory, I think, in spite of all of that, and we'll see how much more polished he might be here in Game 2. But for Dignitas, that's got to be disappointing to have been set up with, you know, probably your best opportunity to win in having Ssumday, you know, a strong split pusher on the map and still come out with a loss here.
All right, it's one of those heart rate gold graphs where it's just someone's going up and down, and it really did look like towards that, you know, post 35-minute mark when they started getting that gold lead, Dignitas looked in a really great position because it's Ssumday on his signature champion. His stats on it are crazy, and you think he's going to win.
Orianna got out-damaged by Maokai.
So there were definitely some very big mistakes from both solo laners of CLG, and you mentioned the one that we had on camera. Yeah, that one looked great compared to the sombrero while flashing out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they definitely have some stuff to clean up, but they were able to grind out that win for game number 1, which, you know, bodes very well moving forward, because I don't think that even though they were able to beat Ssumday's Fiora, I don't think that they want to give that type of strategy over to Dignitas again, because if you force him onto something like the Poppy, it seems so much easier to be able to take him.
Well,
down.
yeah, I mean, his win rates, when we were looking at some of both his career stats and his split stats, I mean, now moves to 12-4 on Fiora over his career, so just under an 80% win rate there. Maokai, this split 3-3, Poppy 0-3 for Dignitas, so definitely a better opportunity to win when he's on this carry champions. The question is, will CLG allow that to happen this time around? For Dignitas, let's pretend they don't have the opportunity to play Fiora again. Do you think that they have what it takes to beat the CLG squad if they get relegated to a tank in the top lane? How do they have to adjust their play style?
So we have seen them win with non-Fiora Ssumday. On the Maokai, they do have those 3 wins, and he has been a really good tank player as well. It's just that when you have him on a tank, then you definitely need Keane to step up, Law to step up, the rest of the damage dealers, right, who have had bright spots, but very uncertain, are they going to actually be able to finish out a game? Keane had that 9-0 Azir game when he was, and you can't end with a late game 9-0 Azir then.
Right. So if you're gonna toss your win condition in Ssumday, you've got to bring up a win condition from one of your other 2 major characters.
Right. And I think Keane's the one to kind of look at. We've seen him on TF be able to do a lot of good things like that. And I think once you get off the main mid lane champ pool, he starts to look a lot better.
All right, CLG sneaks by with a victory here in Game 1 of the series. We're going to step away for a quick break, but when we come back, it's Game 2 between Team Dignitas and Counterlogic Gaming. Stay with us. You're watching North.